Hi there guys, it's Jason with That Hortus, and today we are going to answer the most dreaded question when it comes to caring for proteas. How do I take care of proteas? We're going to go over a couple of things, so from nutrition and watering and also lighting, and then also planting medium. That's going to be a very important feature. And let's just get started. So around me here, I got a couple of specimens, and even before we go into the specimens, let me show you something pretty cool here. After doing this for a while and kind of starting the Protea farm and everything, we got really excited and we wanted to produce a sweatshirt that had our logo on it. So here in front we have AH at Hortus, the logo there, and then in the back, if you want to come a little closer to see, that's just our logo that we've been using for a while now. And we have it printed on the back. I'm really proud of it. If that's something that you guys might want to consider wearing, you might want to send me an email at hortus@gmail.com, and we might have a little chat about it. So far, I'm just doing this mainly so that I can have something consistent to wear for you guys in the videos. But yeah, if you want to try it out, give us a way to help support our business, absolutely. We can have that chat and see what we can happen. So getting started here, I have a couple of pin cushions. Got my silver trees here. I have a white king protea, and you can see the foliage on this thing is beautiful and lush. So it doesn't take really much to get them to get this lush foliage, but you have to do it right. Let me just move on forward here. I have some leucadendrons. This is Cloudbank Ginny. I have leucadendron jester. I have a little ebony down there at the bottom. I have a leucospermum Phil Parvin that's in full open bloom here. Banksia speciosa. Now Banksias are going to be a different section that I'll do a more specific video, but for the most part, if you can care for Proteas white, you'll care for a Banksia just fine. Protea repens, just nice green lush foliage, and you're probably wondering, he must do some crazy stuff to make sure they look great. I don't. And so just stay tuned and we're gonna go over that. And last thing, Leucospermum reflexum, and this is actually the first bloom of the year that I've gotten, and I'm really excited. Look at this thing, it's like a little rocket. I've been joking around about calling it like a jellyfish and stuff, but it's such a great color. And there's also a yellow variant of this too, that's really cool. But yes, so care guide. When it comes to Proteas, these plants are always going to be a full sun plant. I've been seeing numerous posts and inquiries and questions being sent to me regarding, why is my Protea not blooming? Why is it so lanky? What's going on with it? And oftentimes I'm seeing that people are putting them inside. I'm seeing that people put them in a shady situation, or even having them too close to something else where just the entire plant itself is not exposed to the sun. Now, Proteas are just, in general, going to be full sun type of plants. There are some relatives like Cerurea that would prefer being in a little bit more of a protected environment, but for the most part, they do need sufficient sunlight to be able to facilitate things. Now, when it comes to what kind of direction in the house, let's turn the camera around really quick and I can show you what I've been doing here. I'm just going to keep on talking. We have some leucospermums that are being planted out on my south-facing slope here, and I have really good irrigation being put down on them. Now, I do have some overheads that I'm going to retro over to a more soaker type system so I can keep the foliage nice and dry. That's going to be another important feature too. You don't necessarily want to wet the foliage on your plants, especially if you have hard city water. But it's going to be really good to keep that water straight to the roots. They really need it. People often say that Proteas are low water type of plants, and in essence they are, but the way that we think about it is they are just they're like regular plants. They're going to need their water, but the way that they get it is that they'll send their roots down deeper, and that's how they'll achieve that. Now, if you're going to pot up your Proteas, that is no longer the case. If you have a potted Protea, you have to treat it like it's a thirsty plant. It's going to need to get watered depending on the maturity. Could be once a week, could be once every 2 weeks. That's still pretty low by most potted plant standards, but it's still going to need to get that thorough saturation to make sure that it can rejuvenate, the water inside of its leaves and everything. You'll see that most Protea relatives and even Proteas will have thicker, meatier leaves, especially Cynaroides. That's mainly just to help prevent too much water loss. And so as a result, they can stand up to lower water situations. But again, keep in mind, we still got to keep them watered. Now, if you have really hard water, try to do deeper waterings to saturate them through, or if it's potted, maybe give it another watering. You just have to observe it. You don't want to overwater. They don't like that either. But more precisely, you're going to want to make sure that you get the thorough saturation through the pot. And then until that surface starts to feel dry, or perhaps if it's a lighter container like this, you can feel that it's lost maybe 10-20% of its weight, you can go ahead and give it that deep saturation again. And I've done that so far, and I've been getting pretty good results, so at least I can vouch for that. So now we've gotten light down, we've gotten water down. The next thing is going to be the potting medium. Now, I've always pushed my potting medium mix that I've been using since forever. It's the 2-part sand, 2-part peat, 1 part perlite, and then typically there you can build upon that. Some people will swap out 1 part of the perlite with like fir bark, totally normal, or like put in lava rocks. You got to use what's local to you. That'll just make your life a lot easier. And so that's my basic recipe that I use. But of course, when it comes to ones like certain leucospermums that prefer a better draining soil, I'll perhaps switch it out with fir bark, or let's just say I can't get access to peat moss at a certain time. I will put in the fir bark, but be able to supplement that later down the line. So with the medium, the goal is that we want it to drink the water in just like a sponge and be able to get rid of any excess fairly rapidly. It should hold sufficient water so that the plant can be well hydrated and everything, but also not lock into the water so much that it can't properly absorb oxygen and send out those proteoid roots so that it can start to feed and consume the nutrients in your mix. It should be able to breathe is the main thing I'm trying to say. So the last thing that I would want to cover is going to be nutrition. So when it comes to Protea nutrition, I've heard so many different schools of thought. There's the use the native foods, Australian natives to be more specific. That's a great food to use. Unfortunately, here in Southern California for me, I don't really have access to those native foods, or at least maybe not yet. But those native foods are really good because they're oftentimes phos-free, meaning that they don't have phosphorus content in the mix, and that they have a good enough amount of micronutrients to keep the plants very happy. Okay guys, so I feel like I left out a couple of details in certain sections, so I just wanted to do a little science corner moment here. In regards to the potting medium, we want to make sure that we are shooting for somewhat of an acidic mix that really helps with the facilitation of the proteoid roots and doing their thing. And when I mentioned proteoid roots, so these are, we call them cluster roots that are very fine, very minute. These are roots that are very attributed to Proteas, very specific to them. And what those roots actually do is that they, in essence, dissolve rock. They are super active in how they absorb nutrients and everything. And so that's why we don't feed them with phosphorus and we don't feed them with nitrates, is because if we were to put that into the soil, they would end up super absorbing it and eventually overdosing and killing themselves. Again, that's just an adaptation as to what Proteas have done in order to get those nutrients. And so we have to treat them in a way that we can provide them this lack of opportunity so that they can then use their own adaptations to acquire their food and be able to do what they need to do. I'd say another thing too, that's kind of why their roots are so sensitive, is these proteoid roots are tiny, but they are so tightly clustered around certain groupings of nutrients in the soil that when it gets disrupted, that really cuts off a lot of food and nutrients for the plant. and it has to put in all the energy to regrow again, oftentimes it can't. And so as a result, ends up dying. I don't know why Proteas have such a big reputation of being excessively hard as as a landscape plant. I know in the Sunset Western there's actually like a warning symbol about growing these things, like, oh, they're only for expert growers or whatever. I don't agree with that. I feel like anyone and everyone should be able to grow Proteas. It's just a matter of being able to do the right things and knowing the right information. But yeah, just wanted to throw that in there, little science corner. Thanks, guys. Now, what I've been doing so far, because I don't have access to this natives food, I've been using blood meal, at a very light amount, just to incorporate that nitrogen when I need to. And then also I'm using seaweed extract. The seaweed extract is there to help add some chelating elements, and then also just some basic micros that are available to the plant. And then I also am using a micronutrient mix that I'm putting in to supplement for the iron, the magnesium, all the other little facets that oftentimes Proteas are using more so than your macronutrients. There's a misconception out there that you don't need to feed Proteas. That they're not heavy feeders, so I can get why people are saying that, but overall they do need that nutrition. They are plants that have come from a very, very ancient time. They don't, there was very poor nutrients in the soil. You can see, if we turn the camera around, you can look at my soil here that I'm working with. It's real rocky. It's pretty terrible. I broke a shovel trying to get this stuff in. So you can imagine there's not much stuff going on in terms of nutrient content in my soil, and crazy enough, that actually works in my favor. But I need to make sure that I'm supplementing the water. But in the nutrient situation, I'm working it into the surface. I'm just sprinkling it on top and watering it through, and that'll allow my plants to take it up rapidly. You can see they've picked up really great color, and so far so good, right? We're stepping into summer, at least here. We've been hitting some 90 degrees, maybe some triple digits on a day or two, but so far so good. Aside from the nutrient mix that I was kind of throwing out there, I wouldn't say I do anything overtly crazy to make sure that these stay happy. Oftentimes the reason why Proteas will die, and I will make a statement with this, the number one reason why people kill Proteas is they care for them too much, meaning they try to water them too much, and it gets root rot or botrytis, something happens and it ends up rotting out. Another thing too, let's just say, it's always said, roses, you need to force them with phosphorus and that'll help them bloom. Maybe it's someone that's new to Proteas and they don't have that much experience, and so then they go ahead and feed it this high phosphorus food, and then they just kill it, within the week. There's so many ways that we can take initiative in trying to help them, but we just need to keep in mind that Proteas are low and slow. They're from a time when not much was going on with the world. I mean, there wasn't, these plants weren't really fighting for space or anything with everyone else or every other plant around it. Very few and far between. And so, speaking of few and far between too, I forgot to mention air circulation, very critical. You want to make sure your plants get really, really good air circulation. The spacing is important. You'll see the ones that I have here, they have a certain spacing to them, but I will be training them, and they're more so my mother plants for my cutting stock. But air circulation is huge. That makes sure that they get their leaves fairly dry and allows them to get plenty of sunlight, and that's going to be very crucial to preventing any spotting or weird patterns that you'll see on the leaves. But going back to things, these plants were from a time where not much was going on. So you have to kind of get into that mindset of just leaving it alone to a certain extent, of course. And in doing so, you should be able to get some really successful plants. For the most part, I would say that covers all the bases. If you have any questions, please leave them down at the comments. I'm very happy to answer them. You can also email me with some pictures or whatever. If you have a particular disease or trouble that you're facing with your Proteas, I'm very happy to answer them. And stay tuned, and if anything, I can do another video on perhaps disease or pests, whatever you guys like. You can put it out in the comments and I can see what I can do next. Other than that, thank you so much, guys, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.